You're 21, sitting in a parked sedan at a truck stop, eating a gas station sandwich. Decades later, you sign your name on a $6 billion merger with the company that once hired you as a kid. Out on the highway, trucks move more than 11 billion tons of freight a year and capture roughly 4/5 of the nation's freight bill. Industry revenue runs in the $900 to $940 billion range annually, just shy of $1 trillion machine that never stops. More than 3.5 million people sit behind the wheel, feeding that machine mile by mile. You are about to trade your 20s, your health, and your time at home for a slice of that revenue stream. In this line of work, the churn is brutal. At the big long-haul carriers, annual driver turnover is around 90 to 94%, meaning a typical fleet replaces almost its entire driver pool every year. You are not a special case. You are another name in a system that assumes you will quit. If you like breakdowns of how careers actually progress, like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. You start with tuition. A basic CDL program runs 3 to 4 weeks, and the tuition alone typically lands between $3,000 and $10,000. Community college options can sit near $3,000 to $5,000, while private schools and fast-track academies push toward $8,000 to $12,000. By the time you add state fees, testing, and a month of living without real income, the total outlay can reach close to $9,000 before you ever touch a loaded trailer. The federal government sets the curriculum, not the hours. Entry-level driver training rules require you to pass a theory course with at least an 80% score and complete behind-the-wheel training before you test. But they do not mandate a specific minimum number of training hours. Schools fill that gap with their own standard. Most serious Class A programs are built around roughly 160 hours of instruction, usually packed into 4 40-hour weeks. On paper, that is 1 month. In practice, it feels longer. You live with a scripted pre-trip inspection that forces you to check every hose, bolt, coupling, brake chamber, and clearance light on the unit. You repeat the same phrases until your voice is worn out, because the examiner grades what you say as much as what you see. You back trailers through cones in a crowded yard, while other students watch you miss the same setup again and again. You memorize federal rules before you ever get paid to follow them. Then you graduate. You sign a 1-year contract with a mega carrier because they agree to reimburse some of that tuition if you give them your first 12 months. You step into a sleeper cab that feels like a small closet bolted to an engine. Your pay is quoted in cents per mile. As a rookie with no experience, your starting rate sits around 45 to 52 cents per mile at many large carriers. The math looks fine on a recruiter flyer. 2,000 to 2,500 miles a week at roughly 45 to 50 cents a mile is $900 to $1,300 before taxes. You only get that if the miles show up. You only get that if nothing breaks. No shipper holds you 6 hours on a dock, and the dispatcher actually answers the phone. Now the federal clock runs your life. You can drive up to 11 hours after 10 consecutive hours off duty. You cannot drive after the 14th hour on duty, no matter how much of that time was spent waiting at a dock. You need a 30-minute break after 8 hours of driving, whether or not you want one. You cannot go past 60 or 70 hours on duty in 7 or 8 days without a 34-hour reset somewhere in a parking lot. Your logbook becomes a game of Tetris. You watch the 11-hour clock, the 14-hour clock, and the 70-hour clock at the same time. You nurse the truck through traffic, weather, and construction, not for glory, but to squeeze another paid mile out of a day before the electronic log locks you out. You sleep where you park, you shower where you can, you eat what you find under fluorescent lights. You survive the rookie year. You keep the accidents off your record, the violations off your log, and the late deliveries to a minimum. Your mileage rate inches up. You move into the experienced band, where base pay pushes past 55 cents a mile at many fleets. You know how to work the system now, but the system has been working on you the entire time. The health numbers do not lie. In a national survey of long-haul truck drivers, roughly 69% were obese, compared to about 1/3 of other working adults. 17% met the threshold for morbid obesity, with body mass indexes of 40 or higher, more than double the general workforce. More than half of drivers in that study reported at least 2 serious risk factors such as high blood pressure, smoking, limited physical activity, high cholesterol, or chronic lack of sleep. Smoking stays common in the cab. One survey found that around 21% of truck drivers use tobacco, and among those smokers, almost 70% showed high or very high nicotine dependence. You sit 10 or 11 hours a day. You eat heavy food at odd hours. You try to sleep in a vibrating box 20 yards from an interstate. The life expectancy gap is real. Industry analyses and training resources routinely cite an average life expectancy for truck drivers around 61 years, roughly 17 years shorter than the U.S. average near 78 to 79. You watch co-workers hit their 60s and disappear before they ever take a real retirement. At home, the strain shows up in paperwork, not just in blood work. One Canadian carrier's review of its own families found divorce rates around 19% for trucking couples, in a country where 38 to 41% of marriages were projected to end by the 30th anniversary. Other lists of high-risk occupations put truck drivers much higher, with divorce rates pushing toward 40 to 50% in some rankings. The exact number shifts with the study, but the pattern does not. Long absences, missed events, and constant fatigue erode relationships faster than most people admit. You keep going because the pay is steady. You move from the spot market chaos of over-the-road to a dedicated lane or a private fleet if you are lucky, chasing more predictable schedules and lower turnover. The big truckload outfits still churn close to 90% of their drivers each year, while some private and less-than-truckload fleets keep turnover closer to the low double digits. You understand why people leave. You also understand why you stay. After years as a company driver, you decide you want out from under the dispatcher's thumb. You want to set your own schedule, pick your own loads, and keep the larger checks, so you decide to buy the truck. You walk onto a dealer lot in 2026 and look at the sticker on a new Class 8 sleeper. Tariffs and component costs have pushed baseline prices past $170,000 for a typical highway tractor with a sleeper cab. Price guides now quote $170,000 to $172,000 as the normal range, not the high end. A clean used truck from the last cycle, maybe a 3 or 4-year-old model with 400 to 500,000 miles, sits between $60,000 and $80,000 in many listings. You run the financing numbers. On a $170,000 new truck at roughly 7.5% APR over 5 years, a typical example payment is about $3,400 a month. On a $95,000 used truck at around 10.5% APR over the same term, the payment is roughly $2,050 a month. The lower note comes with older equipment, weaker warranty coverage, and higher breakdown risk. The truck payment is only one line in the ledger. You now pay for fuel, which can swallow 20 to 30% of your revenue on its own. You pay for commercial insurance, which climbs quickly for new authorities. You pay for maintenance, tires, permits, electronic logs, and an accountant who understands this business. You negotiate fuel surcharges into your rate per mile, but the timing is never perfect. Fuel prices jump immediately. Contract adjustments lag. On paper, the revenue looks impressive. You book $2 to $3 per mile on some lanes and tell yourself that this is double what you made as a company driver. Then you subtract deadhead miles, fuel, the truck note, insurance, and unpaid downtime. You realize the narrow strip left over is your real wage, and it depends on running hard with almost no safety margin. The statistics on survival are harsh. Industry analyses of owner-operator businesses estimate that 85 to 90% of new ventures fail within their first few years. The causes are predictable: underestimating operating costs, relying on one broker or one customer, deferring maintenance, and draining cash flow to cover personal bills. In practice, it comes down to liquidity. Most people run out of money before the truck runs out of miles. You are technically free. You choose your loads. You choose your routes. You also sign a multi-year note that effectively makes you a captive of your own equipment. The freedom you chased starts to look like financial bondage to a depreciating asset and a stream of fuel receipts. At some point, you stop thinking of yourself as a driver. You hire someone else to sit in the second truck, then a third, then a fifth. You stop managing the logbook minute by minute and start managing payroll, safety scores, and customer contracts. You are now on the other side of the turnover statistics. You watch rookie applications roll in from people who look a lot like you once did. You buy used sleepers in that $60,000 to $80,000 band and push them another 500,000 miles under your own DOT number. You spread your risk across lanes, shippers, and segments. You track your fuel, maintenance, and insurance ratios the way you once watched your hours of service clock. At scale, the math changes. Knight Transportation started in 1990 with 4 cousins, 3 trucks, a $10 million credit line, and about $13 million of revenue in its first full year. Swift Transportation began in 1966 in Phoenix with the Moyes family and a single truck hauling steel and cotton between Arizona and California. Both firms grew by stacking trucks, terminals, and contracts until they became national carriers. In 2017, those two paths converged. Knight Transportation and Swift Transportation agreed to an all-stock merger valued at roughly $6 billion, creating Knight Swift Transportation Holdings. The combined company controlled around 23,000 tractors, 77,000 trailers, and about 5% of the U.S. truckload market, making it the largest truckload carrier in North America. You picture your own signature on paperwork like that. You remember starting in a car at a truck stop, counting coins after paying for CDL school. You remember watching your health slip a little each year while the freight market expanded toward nearly $1 trillion of annual revenue. You remember assuming the job was about the steering wheel. By the time you reach the exit, you know better. The people who actually win this game do not hold a wheel for long. You learn the business from the inside, survive the rookie years, avoid the owner-operator graveyard, and then build a fleet that runs whether you sleep or not. The top of the ladder is not another big horsepower tractor. The top is moving paper, managing risk, and stepping away from the truck stop for the last time without ever having to sleep there again.